Who says things were better in the good old days? Here are 5 things in modern games that we take for granted.
So it's important to say that this isn't a thinly disguised feature that's actually just saying you don't know you're born over and over again, but it's important to talk about a few things that we just assume are standard in games in 2019. Sure, there's the small matter of the visual upgrades of the last decade or so, but there are now key granular mechanics that we now expect to be in every modern game. From mantling everything in sight to mere fast travel, it's good to recognise that we haven't always had it all, just so we can appreciate it even more.
If it's your first time here, welcome, and hit that subscribe button to make sure that you never miss another feature from us. For now though, here are the 5 things in modern games that we take for granted.
Given that one of the first buttons you probably press in a game is the jump button, you'd think that we'd have been climbing and mantling everything in sight for years. But no, obstacles in video games are there for a reason, and that's normally to send you in the direction that a game developer can control. It's only now, in 2019, that our expectations have changed somewhat.
Of course, the first example I'm going to give is Assassin's Creed, because you'd expect nothing less. But the evolution of the free-running franchise is a particularly good place to look at the changes in our vertical expectations.
While Assassin's Creed has always been about reaching those sync points, we've moved from very clearly labelled handholds and draped white sheets in the direction of free-running zones to, well, everything being a climbing frame. Ancient Greek wall? Sure. Pyramid complete with golden tip? I think so. Compare this Spider-Man-osity to the early days of the series, and it's easy to see how far the games and our expectations have come.
Don't do that again, understand?
But it's not just how we stick to surfaces that's changed. Mantling has only just arrived for Borderlands 3. And remember when you couldn't climb over thigh-high fences and it didn't make you want to pull your own eyes out?
The only time this ever really becomes apparent though is in the glossy remakes of yesteryear, or if you make your way through one of our best lists and decide to check out some slightly older games. The best titles won't let you get confused, as they'll be too busy steering you in the right path with those subtle tricks that we've talked about in other videos. But sometimes, just sometimes, there'll be occasions where you just don't understand why you've been bested by a thigh-high wall. Again.
We like to be nostalgic about maps, don't we? Remember when you used to get an actual paper map with your game? Remember when games came in actual boxes, which would facilitate the inclusion of a map?
Remember spending literal hours searching for an egg mine in Morrowind, getting gradually more infuriated because the quest instructions were so hopelessly vague? What's that? The mine is south of Balmora? Southwest of the Odai River? 3 steps left of the 3rd largest comberry bush? Cool.
So yes, maps and everything to do with maps are things we often take for granted. These days, we're used to tooltips pointing out exactly where we need to go. Maps change and update as we uncover new things. And some games go even further, plotting the apex route that we need to follow to reach an objective.
That's not to say that every modern edition is welcome. Fast travel, while convenient, can discourage you from fully exploring an open world. This was enough of a problem for Matt that he modded Oblivion to remove fast travel, which also tells you something about Matt's self-control, or, well, the complete lack of it.
But the point here is that sometimes the experience between objectives is what immerses you in the world. To steal an inspirational calendar quote, it's not the destination, it's the journey that matters, and fast travel is a bit like pressing a button to grow as a person. But hey, it's not all bad news.
To go back to Morrowind again, you could only fast travel by using certain spells, boats, or inside the shells of these sinister 40-foot insects called silt striders, which, yes, were only marked on your paper map. So this was a form of fast travel that helped you feel like you were part of that world and is distinct from instant travel.
We make a special trip just for you, same low price.
We've We've all got at least one story, haven't we? That time the power went out and you just managed to get through a tricky trap in Tomb Raider 2 for the first time, or when you became the victim of bad ink ribbon management in the Resi 1 remake right before the Crimson Head started re-rising from the grave. Unless it's part of the experience, like a Souls game, nothing shatters our hearts like losing progress.
Done right, checkpoints in modern games allow us to feel like we've overcome challenges without it ever becoming repetitive or frustrating. But this isn't the same as a game being easy. We love to look back and reminisce about how hard games used to be and how the kids today don't know they're born.
Gosh, Mr. McDuck, I've never been to the moon before.
But truthfully, when you play an old title with miserable checkpointing, you'll realise that difficult doesn't necessarily mean better. Nostalgia won't stop you launching your best-in-class gaming peripherals across the room because of a badly placed or entirely missing checkpoint.
Do you think Magica will keep out of our way now, Uncle Scrooge?
It's hard to say, lad. Folks like her have a way of popping up at the most inconvenient moments.
Nobody wants to spend their free time trudging back through areas they've already completed. There are already too many games and just not enough hours in the day. And the other big offender in this category is a boss fight checkpoint that happens before an unskippable cutscene, because the only thing worse than being killed by a cheap boss is having to listen to their pre-fight speech every single time you fail.
If we're honest, this isn't a problem exclusive to older games, although it is more common in them. Checkpointing is surprisingly difficult to nail. Different people will struggle with different things, so even with rigorous playtesting, developers might not get it right for everyone. They're a creative and a technical problem.
Come on!
And getting their placement correct takes time, knowledge, and budget. That said, it doesn't make us any less angry about this. Mouse look. WASD. Twinstick controls. There are few examples that could fit into this section, but this is essentially shorthand for the feeling that you get when you go back to an old game and it just doesn't control how you remember.
Nowadays, we intuitively know how a 3D game will play. One hand on the keyboard, the other on the mouse, just as nature intended. But for a while, every game would do this differently, and there was a time in the far distant past when using the mouse to look around wasn't even a thing. Can you imagine?
There's plenty of debate about which PC game implemented full 3D mouse look as standard. Some say Duke Nukem 3D, others say Quake. But when Dennis Fong won the first ever Quake tournament using a mouse and keyboard, he was in the minority. So the general consensus is that Marathon was the first game to do full 3D mouse look properly. And since then, because that control scheme has become ubiquitous, we never have to go through those paralysing early moments of working out how to shoot, look, crouch and sprint, all in a game that probably didn't even have a tutorial, which is another thing that we take for granted.
So as PC players, we got to experience free look controls in FPS games long before our console relatives. GoldenEye had it, if you used two controllers, the long-forgotten Alien Resurrection made it the default control scheme, and Halo Combat Evolved popularised it, all the while we were already living the mouse and keyboard dream.
Finally, while we don't expect every game we play to be destructible in the same way as Red Faction, Guerrilla Remastered, yep, that's always going to be a nightmare to say, we now have a base level of interactivity that we've come to treat as the norm in 2019. Who cares if turning on the taps actually makes a difference to who lives or dies? It's the principle of being able to play with plumbing that matters.
Once again, it's that little added experiential level of detail that suggests just a hint of realism. Look at it zoomed out, and it still doesn't make much sense. Why should you be able to turn showers on and off, but not be able to open drawers or windows? Game logic is not like Earth logic, but it still matters.
The joy of all of this is the fact that we've been pushing games to their limits for years. Like Jurassic Park raptors at electric fences, we've been testing what we can shoot, how much we can destroy, thanks Nick, and the ways that we can have a lasting impact on the digital world. We expect curtains in modern games to flap, we expect bullet holes to be left in walls, and we miss these things when we play older titles. A simple thing like being able to shoot a physical arrow in Oblivion, ideally straight into the adoring fan's head, sets the game apart from older, more procedural iterations like Morrowind.
And it turns out that it doesn't take much to make us feel like part of the world. Even if a game isn't massively interactive, sprinkle in some of those red barrels and we'll automatically feel like we have a sense of joyously fiery agency.
Because what are games about if not interacting with a digital world? Boom.
So that's 5 modern game conveniences we now take for granted. Let us know if we've missed anything that you definitely don't miss in the comments below. Drop us a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to Logitech G for more features just like this one. If you do already subscribe, remember to hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video lands.